Okay, this is an important topic, expressions versus equations. The names aren't terribly important, I guess. They're just terminology, but we need a way to talk about them. So expressions and equations are what we're going to talk about. An expression is, let's see, an expression has a value. So for example, let's say here's a rock. That's like an expression. I have one rock. Okay? One rock, let's say it weighs 1 pound. Now an equation doesn't have a value like 1 pound. An equation is true or false. So an equation is more like sort of a teeter-totter. And on each side, it's a balance. You've got your rock here, and then you've got another rock over here, and they have the same value. Each side has a value. They each have their own value. And if the equation is true, if this is balanced, then these two things are the same. Okay? So this equation would be true. It's balanced. Alright, an expression has a value. An equation is true or false. So what sorts of things could we do to an expression? Well, one thing I could do, if I take this rock, I could, let's erase this. I could put another rock. I could double the number of rocks I have, or I could multiply the number of rocks I have by 3. But now I've changed its value. So to make its value back the same, I would have to take 1/3 of this back. So I'd have to get rid of those 2 rocks. So you could look at what I just did as adding 2 and then subtracting 2 rocks, or adding 2 pounds and subtracting 2 pounds. Now its value is back to where it was. You don't want to change the value of an expression because that's what's important about it. Okay? Or you could look at this as what I just did. I multiplied my number of rocks by 3, and then I divided the number of rocks by 3, right? Because I went from 1 rock to 3 rocks, that's multiplying by 3. Then I went from 3 rocks to 1 rock. I divided by 3. So what can you do to an expression that doesn't change its value? Well, if you add 2 and subtract 2, that's the same thing as adding 0 or subtracting 0. If you multiply by 3 and then divide by 3, that's the same thing as multiplying by 1 or dividing by 1. So with expressions, you're only allowed to do things that do not change its value. Okay, so you're very limited as to what you can do. You can do things like add 0, subtract 0, or multiply by 1 or divide by 1. Okay? Now, with equations, there's a lot more flexibility. For example, I could add whatever I want to this side, some other rock, as long as I add that rock to this side as well. This is still balanced. Each side has a different value than it did before, but still the values are the same. So I could multiply both sides by 2, for example. I could add 1 to both sides. The values, the independent values, could change as long as you keep them the same throughout. Okay? So that's the difference between an expression or an equation. So an example, here's an expression, 2. Here's an equation, 2 equals 1 plus 1. An equation has 2 sides to the teeter-totter. It's balanced. These two things have equal values. They look different, but they have equal values. Here, this expression has a value that I can't change. So I could take this expression and I could add 4, but then I would have to subtract 4 to not change its value. Down here, I could add 4 to the left side, but then I would have to add 4 to the right side also. And it's still balanced. It's still a true equation.